What is author marketing mastery through optimization, you ask? I'm going to tell you. It's the best way for us authors to make a living selling our books. Are you tired of hearing gurus tell you your book is only good enough to be a lead magnet for services? Are you tired of feeling like you have to be a slave to social media and then frustrated when that time doesn't actually help you sell books? I was too, until I found Ammo. Ammo is the only program that reliably produces results, and it works for anyone. Is it hard work? You bet. Do you have to overcome some of your own prejudices to make Ammo work for you? Absolutely. But rather than being another program that rah-rah shish-goom-bahs tries to get you emotionally excited only to offer unclear methods, Ammo shows you how to design profitable ads step by step through a unique, never-before-tested formula. The founder, Steve Piper, is a data-loving, formula-driven author who escaped the kingdom of Amazon to build a platform for himself where he sold directly to his readers and built a loyal following. With Ammo, you know who's reading your books, how to contact them, and what they want to read next. If you've always been frustrated with Amazon's wall of mystery, of not knowing who's reading your books, of losing 50 to 70% of the hard-earned money you make through book sales, Ammo solves all of those problems by putting you in the driver's seat and showing you how to fulfill your books directly to your readerships. Click the link in the show notes to learn more. My guest on today's episode is Eric Peterson. He is the co-creator of Space Bastards, a graphic novel. And this conversation is so fun in that it's unique to the program. We've never had a graphic novelist on before. And if you are an author thinking about joining Ammo, this is one that's really going to pique your interest because you can see how Ammo is malleable to different genres and areas all throughout writing. It doesn't just apply to fiction or series or certain anything else's. If you write it, they will come. That's a bastardization of Field of Dreams. It's not even what it is. If you build it, he will come. It's more about a relationship with a father and a son, making kind of like amends and that sort of thing. Wanting dad to be proud of you. I want my dad to be proud of me. Anyway, moving on. I do want to let you know that I just got back from the Cincinnati Comic Expo Hawking Books with David and Lydia Scherer. I'm working on getting them both together on an episode so that we can give you a recap of the event and talk about all the things that are so amazing about it. Those two are a storehouse and a wealth of information, and it just would be an amazing episode. So I want to get them both together on an episode. I don't have anything scheduled with them yet. I also do want to let you know that I got my number 2 stretch guest of all time coming up next Wednesday. It's an episode you don't want to miss. It's already in the books. And the funny thing is that there was a scheduling snafu. And so I had to have that interview sitting in the hallway at the Cincinnati Comic Expo, talking to that person while people were running past me in total cosplay costumes. It was a riot. It was a lot of fun. I dare say that even though my recording quality is probably a little bit iffy, it's going to be kind of charming. I dare say. It was a lot of fun. And I know I've had a couple of back and forth emails with this person. It was good. It was all good. It was great. It was fantastic. But you know what's really fantastic too? Eric Peterson, co-creator of Space Bastards. Please enjoy my conversation with Eric Peterson.
This is TRBM Ammo Edition. If you're a published author and want to make a living writing books and selling them to avid readers, you've come to the right place. There's simply no program that's more successful at driving readers towards the books you've written. So the only thing you have to worry about is writing a great book. And the system within Ammo takes care of the rest. Thanks for listening to this conversation.
There's some different things that you're doing because of the price point. I would assume that it causes you to need to figure out a few different things than maybe Steve's program normally talks about. Is that true?
Yeah, there's, in fact, I just wrote an email to Steve like last week about the differences, just in case it was ever helpful if he gets another comic guy or whatever. I mean,
yeah.
it's absolutely essential to us, like what Steve's program taught us.
Yes.
And then there was like definitely a point where we started to scale, and it's like, oh no, wait, we can't scale the same way. We've got to do some different stuff. So
When you talk about scaling, tell me a little bit about the differences that you discovered in scaling comics versus and let's make sure that anybody listening understands it's not just comics, it's also graphic novels. It's anything with a visual element to it. And the reason that that's so important is because the cost of printing something with color paper is quite a bit different than printing a black and white novel on the standard paper. So with that in mind, talk to me about some of the differences in scaling.
Sure. So, and don't let me forget, I also would love to talk to you about, that production side of it, and the cost there changes kind of how we do our sales funnel and the flow and all that. But
Absolutely.
just like specifically, I guess, in terms of scaling, the biggest thing for us was like, I don't know, somebody mentioned, I want to say it was Naomi or somebody, but they mentioned like the target goal of like 30 million for an audience, right?
Okay.
And
it's always changing, by the way. I mean,
I know.
When I started the program, they told me to like get around 750,000 to $1 million. And by now, it's just so different.
Yeah. And so that's our biggest challenge, is that once we started like trying to raise our budget and scale, and we knew we were profitable or whatever, it was like we imploded like a week after that. And the reason for that is that we can't, comic book readers are such a nuanced thing that we can't just put in like John Grisham or something, or I can't put in like a genre.
That's right. That's right.
That doesn't necessarily mean that they read comics. I can't put in a movie because even if you're a fan of maybe a comic book movie,
doesn't mean you read the comics.
They read comics. Right. And so it's like, it's super nuanced. And so it's actually what I'm spending most of my time doing right now is I spend like 90% of our marketing time testing audiences because
that's cool.
It's really, and what's weird too is that it's not just like, I can put in authors that I think we bear a similarity to, and not all of them will produce. And so when I started, there were like 4 target authors that were kind of got us up around 2 million, and that was kind of what I ran with, and we were profitable. But when I started trying to scale up more than that, I was like, something's not working here. And then, so what I did was I ripped that apart, and I tested every single audience, every single author individually. And then I found out that even the 4 that we started with, there was like 2 of those that didn't produce, so we were wasting money on
that's really savvy. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, but it is that's the biggest difference, is the fact that I can't put in like a genre, because it doesn't necessarily mean they read comics. I can't put in comics because it doesn't necessarily mean they read mature readers comics, or I should say, like, the biggest differentiator is that we don't do superhero books, and inevitably most comic readers are like, Marvel or DC guys, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like, well, that doesn't mean you're going to buy our stuff,
And now time for a little ad break. Have you ever heard of the Luke in Time Mysteries? If you're listening to this podcast, chances are you have. The host is also the author. The Luke in Time Mysteries are for anybody who likes a little R-rated action with a bit of magic, as well as characters who do incredibly unlikely things, such as drink 2 gallons of bourbon in a single sitting. It's local, it's place-driven, it's voicey, it's hard-boiled. And where does all of Lyle's food come from? Find out these details and more when you buy the Luke in Time Mysteries. Click the link in the show notes, and we have every format available. Don't miss your chance to get a 60% discount just for being a podcast listener. Now back to the show.
Have you ever seen David Little's Stitches before? Are you familiar with it?
No, not at all.
Okay, so this is a beautiful, beautiful book. Anybody who's just watching, you're going to have a hard time even seeing it on my screen. But his illustrations are beautiful. And what I love is this is a graphic novel, and there's no superheroes. It's literally a guy's memoir that he decided to tell in a graphic novel. And so he tells the story of kind of like his parents' addictions and his abuses and all of those kind of things. And so it's very much just what you would expect to be a memoir, but told in these extremely graphic comic book kind of text layouts, and it's beautiful. It's one of my favorite books. I love it so much.
And there's a lot of stuff that I think people don't. It's a problem nowadays because the movies are fantastic. Like, it's so great how much success that has brought to the world of comics, but it also doesn't help. Like, it doesn't help when it, like, the marketing stuff that we're dealing with now is kind of like actually a good pointer on like an industry issue, which is how many, like, okay, so there's several, there's like millions and millions of comic book fans now because of the movies, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they know Stitches. You know what I mean? It doesn't necessarily mean they would buy a memoir in comic book form, or that they would want to read something adult in nature, or mature readers in a comic book form. That's like a very, very specific thing. So yeah, it's the marketing thing's awesome from a standpoint of producing revenue, but also just pointing out things about demographics that you just don't normally consider,
So what I really enjoy too is, and this is somewhere I've never gone on the podcast before, which I'm just happy to have you as a guest and Alana as a guest before you, and talking about these kind of nuances that I haven't talked about with previous guests in the actual targeting of the ads. So for example, Alana was just on, so people who listen to this podcast will have just heard her by the time they're listening to you. She's writing Christian thriller with kind of a PG-13, almost, but not quite R-rated kind of an audience. Right. I am writing mysteries with an R-rated audience that need to laugh. I cannot help but go for the joke. And so every page, I had a friend, JP, who used to read for me. He was not exactly a beta reader. He was just a reader for me. And he always was like, if you have a page that doesn't have a laugh on it, you failed. And that just like soaked so deep into me. And so everything I write, I'm writing. I'm not playing for a laugh. I'm not like a comic who's like, ha ha, gotcha. I'm really thinking about what's the humor in life, what's funny. But sometimes the humor in life for me comes in a scene where somebody's about to get killed or raped or something really dark. And when you try to find the audience that wants to read that book, you have to get super creative about how do I narrow down my targeting. That's what you're talking about right now. So let's stay here for a second, even though it feels like we've talked about it a fair amount, and talk to me more about the minutia of how you're targeting and what you're doing.
So you pointed out something really kind of key as well, is it actually it isn't just an ad thing. And it also comes to us when we're pitching for like TV and movies, is like, we'll sit there in the pitch room and Space Bastards has a fair amount of comedy, but it's also primarily action, but it's also science fiction. And it's kind of one of these things where it's like, you'll register the person that you're pitching to, like sorting that out in their head and coming back to you, where it's like, is this a comedy? Is this and it's like, yeah, sort of. I mean, but it's all three of these things, and in terms of the ad stuff, it's that same thing. It's like genres can be really tricky because I at least in my case with Space Bastards and the other stuff I write too, is I don't really believe solo like genres. I believe that there's a secondary genre or maybe even tertiary genre.
Absolutely.
And so, who knows? Like there might be guys that are really into comedy and they want to read a comedy that don't want to read an action. You know what I mean? Or vice versa. So it's kind of a dicey thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I would agree with you, even when you said tertiary genre. So for, again, like diving into me, just to relate to where you're at, is I went to an MFA program. So I got my grad degree, and they taught me how to write literary fiction. It was supposed to be slice of life, just as real as you could possibly be. The realer it could be, the better it was. So that's in my blood. I want my characters to feel three-dimensional, real. I want everyone to have character development and just like fleshiness to them, but I also want that comedy, and I also want that like blood and gore. I think that connecting to what you're talking about is that Ryan Reynolds Deadpool kind of area, where like Deadpool in general, this is a great
we're literally testing Deadpool right now. That's
awesome. Okay, awesome. How's it going? Not doing well. Okay, that's funny. I wonder why it's not doing well.
It's like I should try and stay on topic in terms of marketing, but my head,
not really. We go wherever we go.
My head is all over the place in terms of just the industry in general, because of the marketing. Is actually doing all this audience research, to me, has pointed out a lot of the turbulence within the comic industry because of the fact, we'll use Deadpool as an example, right? It's like, I'm targeting a guy who really likes Deadpool, right?
Yeah.
Does he read Deadpool? Does he read?
Exactly. Yes.
Is he a spandex fetishist? I mean, is that he's only into superheroes? I don't know. It's such a big thing. And then the other thing too that Joe, my co-writer, and I were talking about yesterday is I was like, man, I wish there was a movie that was like Guardians of the Galaxy, but rated R, and I could and it had like, and it was super successful. It was as successful as Deadpool.
Yes.
And I would target that audience. I would try, and then we realized we're like, that movie doesn't exist, which is why our book exists. So we can't target that. You know what I mean?
What's great is that you're on the doorstep of so many different things, because I keep thinking Sin City is the other one that I was just thinking of.
Yeah,
is like Sin City's right, except Sin City's not quite funny enough. But it's clear to me in a way that I usually don't have when I interview, that you and I actually are trying to do the same things with a slightly different spin. So I want to one day, and I think I told you this emailing before we got on, have my novel is as a graphic novel, because it's perfect for a graphic novel. It's got like every element of it is right. And I think the encouraging thing for you and I, and anybody who's listening and thinking like I do something bloody, gutsy, nasty, and hilarious, we might be the front of a wave right now. That might be the truth. The truth might be we're the front of a wave. And so it'll take us a minute to find the swell where we surf. But it's when we start to surf, it's going to be cool.
You don't want to be the first head through the wall, you know? I mean,
but sometimes you are.
But yeah, you kind of have to be if that's just the way you're going, you know? It scared us. I mean, we have a publisher, Space Bastards. Like they put out the single issues, they put out the trade paperbacks and stuff. And then the hardcovers that we sell direct is really how we fund like the sequels and paying the artist, because that's like our biggest financial hurdle. Awesome. But part of that was, I mean, we spent many years making it because it's something that Joe, my co-writer, and I just wanted to exist. We're like, we just crack each other up writing it. And the hard part about that is that you have this space of like several years where you just don't know if that audience is even out there. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was the coolest thing when the publisher released the single issues and we're like, oh my God, we're not insane. Like there's other people that like the stuff that we like. And then again, like having to sell direct ourselves and build out the audiences and all that stuff has taught us a lot about like, well, we know who these people are, but it's like, they're buried. They're out, you know, they're buried beyond all these other genres, you know?
Yeah. You know, and then we're going to go back. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about your process, because you also have a very unique process in that it's a bit like TV. It's a bit like film. You have a bunch of people creating one single product versus most of the people who are on the show. Most of the people who listen are single creators doing everything all by themselves. And so I think that that's a really important piece. I also think that the dichotomy between what is coming and what you're doing. So how are you able to do direct sales and how are you able to do a publisher? Because most people can't do that either. I mean, there's so many nuances here.
Sure. So that was a big sticking point before we signed up with that publisher. It was for me. I mean, I've come from kind of a history of owning businesses and like doing startups and stuff like that. And so much to I think the annoyance of everybody who works with me and has to go through contracts and stuff is like, there is that innate part of me that's just like, okay, well, what if like, what can I control? Like what, if these guys are doing this or whatever, and it doesn't go the way that I want it to, or whatever, can I build in something where I know at least I got this? And that's what we did with Space Bastards. That was really super important to me. And also too, I'm like a diehard, like hardcover graphic novel collector. And so, and Space Bastards, when I first built it, even before we had the publisher, that was the first thing I did was make a hardcover. And so for me, it was kind of like, no matter what happens in all these other iterations, I just want to at least know that like my stamp is this. Like I designed the hardcovers and it's my prized baby, you know? I guess to your point, that's not normal. And it annoys it annoys a lot of people to have to go through that process contractually, but I'm for me, it's like super important, you know?
Absolutely. Where are you based out of, by the way?
Sort of like final cut on a movie or something, or being able to be like, you know what, no matter what the studio does, I want to still have my director's cut, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's really important. It's so much easier with a novel where where like the buck stops with you. You get to decide every final thing. Where are you based out of?
Phoenix, Arizona.
Aha. How hot is it there right now?
Actually, today's been pretty. I haven't checked the temperature, but I think we're maybe in the 80s, like high 80s,
Oh,
90s.
okay.
Yeah, it's not bad today. We've had some
Yeah.
storms, like hurricane
Okay.
weather has rolled in.
Yep.
So it's kind of cooled everything off.
My cousin lives out there, and so I pay a little bit more attention to it now than I used to. But I've traveled the United States extensively, and Tucson in the spring is beautiful, but Tucson in the summer and Phoenix is just like, oh my God, how did that many people live there? Like, I'm surprised your tires aren't puddles on the ground when you go out to like leave work and stuff. Yeah.
Flying here, flying to Phoenix, coming back on a trip during the summer, it's like 90% of the time it's delayed because it's too hot to land. Like,
yes.
real.
That's insane.
And yeah, it's nuts. The thing is like, I mean, it's beautiful 8 months out of the year. I mean, that's the thing. It's just there's 4 months where you want to die. That's
you know, it's funny that you say that because that's actually true of where I live too. So I live an hour north of Omaha. It's beautiful 8 months a year, and then there's the four, and it's actually the same 4 months. It's like it's so humid and so brutal here that like you don't want to step outside. That humidity is just oppressive when it gets that way. And then so I should say it's 2 months are the same, and then 2 months in the winter. So like I have 2 summer months where that humidity and that brutality is crushing, and then like January, February where the coldness. So we have 2 months here and 2 months there. You have kind of probably 4 months right stacked in the summertime where it's just killing you.
Our winters, and actually since it's a writer's podcast, I can wax philosophical on this.
Yes, but please do.
It's my church is at night, everybody's asleep. I go light a fire and it's like, 50 degrees outside, which is like cool for us, like in December. And I smoke a cigar and I write. I mean, it's like, if I don't do that every night, I go insane. And so during the summer, when it's like 101 degrees at like 1 a.m., I'm like going nuts. I added misters to my little writer's nook. And so now I'm a little bit cooler during the summer, but yeah. I'm jealous of you that have like harsh winters though, because I used to work in the Southeast. Like I'd have to fly out there and stuff. And the first thing that occurred to me culturally out there was how much more of a survivalist mentality everybody has because of the winter. Like, Arizona's brutal during the summer, but it's not the same thing. It doesn't breed like it doesn't breed like a Walking Dead sort of mentality where everything crumbles. We know how to survive. And in the Southeast or in where you live or wherever there's like actual seasons and brutal winters, it's like there's a different mentality that comes out of everybody. I feel like people come out of that like just knowing that like if the road's shut down, like my children will die. I know how to do this.
That is very true. You undoubtedly know people who have lived in places where they have brutal winters because of the way that we drive when there's weather conditions. That can even be rain. Like, I think it's crazy to drive in places where people don't have rain very often because like it's raining and people slow down like it's snow and you're like, what is wrong with you? I will say for just kind of a contrast that the only times in my life so far that I have been truly uncomfortable to the deepest level is in extreme heat. So my wife and I moved from Omaha to Oakland, Nebraska, which is just an hour north, in the dead of summer 2 years ago. I believe it's 2 years ago. At any rate, I mean, like that season that I was talking to you about where the humidity is just crushing you. And so we're moving boxes and all day. And so I'm moving everything. I'm lifting, I'm going upstairs, downstairs, in, out of corners. And obviously you have your utilities off because the doors are wide open so you can move stuff in. By the end of the day, I broke out in the most disgusting hives. Like my body was like a map of hives all over because I got such bad heat stroke. Like it was the most uncomfortable thing in the world. So heat definitely is not a day in the park if it's too much.
I think I like being wet. I've realized that I'm definitely a winter guy.
Yeah.
But lately I've been like, man, I like swimming. Like I like beach stuff. And that means I think I am a heat guy. I think I'm
I am too. Yes. My desire is to be by the ocean or by a large body of water. Coeur d'Alene, Idaho is probably one of my favorite places on earth, if not my favorite place on earth. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about books and your process. It's unique what you're doing. So talk to me a little bit about, like, to talk shop as if you're talking to somebody who knows something about this process. How does everybody divvy out the writing, the illustration, who gets paid, how do they get paid, all that kind of stuff?
Sure. This is amazing, by the way, too. I promise I will give you what you need here, but short preface.
Yes.
I do a lot of podcasts, but they're not writer podcasts.
Okay.
And so typically when I start talking process, which I love to talk about, I think deep down, I kind of always wanted to be a teacher. My co-writer and the podcast host and everybody just kind of rolls their eyes. They're like, we don't want to hear about this. We want to talk about page 11, issue 7 or whatever.
Yeah.
So for me to be able to be like, oh, let me tell you how I make the sauce. Like, yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So this podcast it's fairly large at this point, but it grew slowly because of that, because I was so dedicated to process, to marketing, to like the nuts and bolts. There's like, if you host a podcast right now that's like, hey, here's how you write a novel, like you got to do steps 1, 2, and 3. And everybody listens to that because people want to know how to finish a book. I'm speaking to people who have finished a book and actually want to know how to get readers. And that's a lot harder. And it's a smaller slice of the pie.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Like you said, head through the wall. Yeah. So,
yeah, exactly.
The comics I've written in the past, I tended to be the only writer, and believe it's still a great, I still love the process. But on this one, because we started by making like crappy short films, and then we were like it's so hard to make like a good short film, let alone like sci-fi, which is what Space Bastards is. Like this, it's never going to look right. Is that it needs to be a comic. And by that point, I was pretty adept at knowing the process for making comics, and I knew artists and had worked with a lot of artists and stuff. And so it just made that like natural transition. But because of the movies and were always made with me and my buddy Joe, I was like, well, we're going to co-write this thing. And that was new for me. And now it's like, I never want to go back. In fact, I'm getting ready to write a bunch of other stuff. And I think I'm going to be the solo writer on all that, non-Space Bastard stuff, like other stuff. And it kind of intimidates me a little bit because for years now, I've had this wonderful thing with Joe where I have a sounding board. You know what I mean? The thing about having a co-writer that I love the most, and even the artist is you don't have to think about the audience. You think like all that stuff we talked about earlier. I just like divorce myself from all of that when I'm creating. The biggest thing I try to do is just think of a guy, like think of one person as my audience and try to elicit a joke or a laugh from them, elicit tears from them, or whatever it is. It's so much easier to work with that one guy, whether that's your co-writer or whether that's your artist. Talking process, the biggest thing with Joe and I is that we're diehard outliners. So like our outlines for an issue of Space Bastards, like a 30-page issue of Space Bastards, that outline might be like 10 pages. Like by the time I'm actually scripting, I'm not thinking about structure at all. All that Joseph Campbell stuff has already been done for months and months. So we're bouncing back and forth.
30-page issue, 10-page outline. Yeah.
Yeah, because we'll rip it apart and want to know everything. And the cool thing about that is that when it comes time for scripting, I'm focused on two things. I'm focusing on dialogue because that hasn't been written. That's all fresh. And so I get to kind of like act, like put myself in the shoes of the characters. And then the other thing I'm thinking about is direction. Comic book scripts are different than novels, and they're different than like screenplays because you have to call the panels. So like a script for a comic book will literally be like page 3, panel 1. We see blah, blah, blah. Whereas like in a screenplay, you don't do that. You're in a screenplay. It's like describe what is happening.
Yeah, you've got a still. So you have a still moment. Like you need to encapsulate a lot of movement into a still moment for a
totally. And the cool thing about that is that like, again, the audience is that like for that, when I'm writing my script, I'm not writing that script for the people out there to read. I'm writing it for the artist. It's like directing is like, I'm writing a script to be like, all right, if Derek Robertson's the artist on this, I know what Derek likes. And I've typically like, oh, that's the other thing too. I should point out is that like, there's a few different artists that work on Space Bastards. And what I'll do, I'll already know which artist is working on which issue or like which arc. And so what I'll do is before I write that script, but once the outline is done, I'll read nothing but that artist's work for like 2 weeks. So that way I'm thinking in terms of like Simon Bisley's like mind's eye, like how he tends to draw and portray motion and portray, movement and character and all that stuff. So that way when I'm writing the script for him, my mind hopefully is like cinematically thinking of a Simon Page, you know what I mean? And
how long does it take for you to have that kind of like collaborative vision that you're actually thinking about the artist you're working with to write instructions for that person? I think I'm hearing you right, and that's what you're doing, and that is just a really, really beautiful thing. I hope other novelists can figure out a way to integrate something about what you are doing, because we talk about in non-visual novels, we talk about thinking of your ideal reader. So you don't necessarily write to an audience, but you write to a person that you believe you will please. And that's kind of what you're doing in a sense. I don't know that please is the right word in this case, but you're artist. Like you are literally crafting words that make sense to another human being. That is a trip.
And there's a bit of strategy to that as well, because you don't want to think of it like an actor, right? You don't ever, as a director, want to go up to an actor and be like, say it this way. Like you'll freak them out. Like you can't do that. It's the same way with an artist. I don't want to go up to an artist and be like, draw it this way. What I want to do is elicit a certain reaction or emotion on their part so that it comes out in the right direction. You know what I mean? So
you talked about Final Cut earlier. How much of that is going on? So if the artist delivers something to you and you feel like I really missed the target on this one, do you go back and tell them like redo this panel? It didn't turn out the way I needed, or is there a level of tattoo artists where you're like, hey, what's done is done?
It's how can I put it the right way? There's two things. It's like we've worked with artists who don't get it. And then it's like, this isn't going to work. And that's always that doesn't happen a lot, but when it does happen, it's always really uncomfortable, obviously. And then the other side of it is like I'm proud of the artists that have worked on Space Bastards and gone to print, because there's almost never like a lot of corrections. Most times it's maybe continuity. It's like the stuff that they made is really good and it's better than we envisioned, and it's in the right direction and everything's cool. But the bracelet changes hands between the panels. We got to fix that. So that stuff's pretty easy to like reach out to them and just say, hey, can you redo this? There's been occasions where we have gotten something and it's just not there, or like and in those situations, again, it's like directing. You're like, I find for me, my favorite thing to do is point out all the stuff that they did right and then carve away and be like, what we need to do is somehow get to that. We need to get on this page. We need to elicit that. We need to get this on that level. I don't think it takes so much work for these artists. I mean, it's like back-breaking work. I don't know a single comic book artist who does not have back problems, like when they're older, and
yeah.
And
you
it's
should
like,
tell them to get a standing desk. If you've noticed, like I'm moving around all the time, it really does help so much.
But it's like, I try to think of that whenever I'm critiquing or there's changes, because changes suck. I mean, they don't want to do that. It's not fun to have to redo something, but I think of how I want to be talked to. And if I just put my heart and soul into something and it's just not there yet, the best way to get that, I feel, is to still be friendly and cordial and complimentary about it. And then on about, this just needs to be fixed,
Yeah, there's an interesting thing. We are going deeper into process than I often do on the show, but what I have noticed for myself and what works really well for me, I have 3 people who read everything that I write. And they don't always love everything that I write, but there's just 3 people, and then it goes to edits. I don't, like I said earlier, I don't consider them betas, because I'm going to take a lot of what they say and I'm going to craft toward what they say because I trust their taste. It sounds a little bit like that's going on for you, is that you found these people that you work with and you're like, I trust your taste. I know that what you're doing is for the best. At the same time, I think there's something really interesting in those people learn how to speak to me in a way that I receive, because it's really tough for me personally. And I'm just speaking for myself right now, but maybe there's others out there who feel this way. It's really tough to take criticism. I don't even like the culture of constructive criticism. I like the culture of, hey, you did really well here. You did really well here. You did really well here. I start to just calibrate toward the things that they don't mention, and also the things that worked well. And I go back to the blank spots. It's almost as if they've like highlighted spots and then said, those are the good spots. And I actually go back to what they never mentioned and fix those to elevate them to the place of the good. So I saw you smile earlier, like you almost had a connection there. And I just want you to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, way to Oprah this up, but I am the worst at what you just talked about. I play music. I don't think I can be in a band ever again. Like,
no. Okay. Because you're an asshole.
No, I mean, I don't, well, some people would say I am probably, but I don't like I don't like people seeing, this sounds terrible. When I'm creating, I feel naked. I don't want people seeing me naked. I'm like, I don't want anybody to see this thing until it is like ready, you know? The same way that like when I write music, I don't like anybody hearing it or giving feedback. But the only person I want to give me feedback is my engineer, is just, hey, you need to replay this or whatever. That's like the cool thing about comic creation is like my best friend and I kind of like married together on this Space Bastards thing, and we can volley back and forth. And if we hurt each other's feelings, it's just us. You know what I mean? It's like nobody else is in that bedroom. And then it's like, by the time it goes to the artist, I know it's pretty refined. And now I'm just collaborating with that artist, and nobody else has to see that, you know what I mean? Until it's ready. And that's a really, again, it's like, this is why I said the Oprah thing is it's like, that's probably not like a great part of me that I have to have it that way, but that's how I really like it. I like being really careful about who sees what, and really doing that. Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty sold out on the idea right now. Now there are people, there's your Joe Rogans out there. There's your Jocko Willinks, the people who are just like, I'm going to go and anything you say, I'm going to do rah, rah, rah. Like if you're a Marine and you happen to be listening, you probably think that I am a total pansy. But
I don't know about that. I don't know. I think what I'm saying is I applaud your willingness to, or your openness to be like, I need there's other people that maybe know better, and I'm going to get their feedback and they're going to see this. I don't think I'm mature enough to do that.
Yeah, I disagree with you. I think what you're saying is the same thing as I'm saying. You have your friend that you're writing with. My wife is the world's most critical human being. We laugh about it sometimes. And she is one of the 3 readers that I have. And oftentimes I have to be like, hey, all I need to hear is what worked. And I need a reminder of that, because she will come. So this is, for example, anybody who has listened to the podcast for a while, she'll read a book that I'm writing and she'll be like, I liked it. And blah, 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 crush, crush, crush. And I don't hear I liked it. By the end, I hear you are shit.
It's like you cook beef stroganoff or something and somebody's like, I mean, it was delicious, but the salt and the blah, 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 and you're just like, I made shitty beef stroganoff. I'm sorry, by the way. I'm trying not to
I've cursed so many times. It's an explicit podcast. Go for it. Yeah.
Realized too, I got stuck in my teeth, and of course half the podcast has happened before I realized this, but I've got food in my teeth. You'll see, but that's all right.
Nobody will see it until now, and then they'll rewind and look. But so as far as Ammo goes, you joined Ammo. I would love to hear about the moment when you thought, I need that kind of help. And I would love to hear from you, what your thought of Steve is and how the program goes. I'm trying to remember. I don't recall seeing you on a call. Maybe one time I saw you on a call, but maybe not. I'm on and off.
I was on a bunch of them over a series of months. And then ironically, I got invited to this other group that basically right when that happened, my work life got crazy and I haven't been able to join and stuff. But Yeah, in terms of finding ammo, like I said, I kind of have an entrepreneurial background, but the one thing that I've never successfully been able to do was e-commerce, and it drove me nuts because all my friends will like make like a key rack, and they're like, I've sold like 300 of these things online, and I don't even know what I'm doing, and I'm like, I made a good book. I've like tried for like decades to make a good book, and I made a really good book, and I can't sell this thing online. What is my problem? And so I forget how I found one of Steve's ads, but there was that. I don't know if I was supposed to do this or not, so I don't condone this. I don't advocate this, but I weaseled my way into like a quick call with Steve before I bought in and all that, and just told him about. I was like, I'm in a really weird situation. I made this thing, and literally like there's thousands of them in my garage and in an office downtown. We have physical stock. It's not print on demand. The finances of that actually, after a lot of trial and error and a lot of work there, like worked out. It's in our favor. But I'm for the life of me, I cannot. And not only that, but so the co-creator of Space Bastards on the artist side is the co-creator of The Boys, and The Boys is like a hit TV show. I'm like, by me just like throwing that out there, you would expect to move some, but I can never do this in a profitable way. I can't make ads work in my favor. So the fact that Steve was specifically focused on how to sell fiction was what sold me. That was the thing where I was like, oh, I don't have to, I'm not learning. There's a million marketing gurus out there, right? Like I'm not talking to those guys. I'm talking to a guy that's very much about specifically what I want to do. Now it's not comic books, but it's again, like 90% of what he taught me applies. And so then it was like, it was earlier this year. It's like, that's when we started doing it. And then, and even then it was like a lot of trial and error. It was like, cool. Like all the text, it's so funny. All the posts I see about people having kind of like technical snafus and all that all came pretty easy to me. I didn't really get hung up there. The stuff that hung me up was just, you do your tests and we're like, cool, that stuff tests really well. And then we launch and we're like, I think we're doing okay, and then just chipping away at that and like you're live testing, as it were. Like, there's the testing when you're like before you go live, you're like just testing like your images and you're trying to find your perfect ad, right? Like all of that to me went very, very well. My obstacles and challenges started once it was like we're live and the math doesn't quite add up. So what are we doing wrong? And trying to get those conversion rates higher and all that.
Okay. So I think this is specifically interesting to anybody who's trying to do direct sales or maybe is thinking about joining the program, but where I'm going to try to segment this down a little bit and also let me know if you have to go. We're getting close to the 45 minutes I told you. And I know I said we might go an hour. And so just let me know when you absolutely need to go. Okay. When I joined the program, I was running the text ads and blowing the metrics out of the water. There would be 4 or 5 that would just crush. So I would take 4 or 5 texts and I would go and I would grab images. And this was just before AI existed. So I wasn't doing Midjourney or anything like that. I was just grabbing images and like I would pair those images with the text and I would blow the metrics out of the water. And so then I would take that and I would put all of the full ad together. Basically, I'd go sales page. I've always done direct sales because I'm already doing something that you're not supposed to do. So you and I are both kind of in that same boat, which is I'm selling 2 live novels and 2 pre-orders. So I'm selling a 4-book deal for $14.99. I've tried many different variations, but this is the deal that works. This is the deal that's profitable. 4-book deal for $14.99. It took me a very long time, like 7 months to get here. But it was like I would run those variations and I wouldn't even tell people that there was pre-orders. They thought they were buying 4 live novels. And I told Steve on a call with everybody there, hey, I'm going to do it this way. And if anybody gets angry, I will give them an instant refund and let them keep the books. So nobody loses. If they're mad that they only got 2 and they thought they were getting 4, fine. But it was like so angering for me that I would have this perfect ad that all the metrics were good. And the moment I started running it on sales and put it out there, I could not be profitable. I could not be profitable. Have you experienced that at all? Or have you experienced like a disconnect between the metrics and the actual outcome?
Yes, like 18 times, but it's 18 different challenges. And I'm embellishing, but it's like I take your pick, right? Like it sounds like what you went through, you've got multiple challenges there. I mean, one, the biggest thing is that all that testing with your ads does not factor in the fact that you're doing a pre-sale. You know what I mean? That in itself is a big data jump. And I don't know the way around that either, you know.
But nobody knows it's pre-sale. So literally when they see it, even I don't even tell them in the sales page itself. There's no place that they know until they bought it.
Right. Then we can throw that
out. It's a
moot
point. Yeah. But I couldn't quite figure out the thing for a very long time. Now, again, I do run a profitable funnel now, but it took me a long time. I was super stubborn too, though. I think that I have the most unique sales page of anybody in the program. In saying that, I think because you're a graphic novelist, I would love to see your sales page. I'd love to show it to the listeners in the show notes. But let's dive back into you a little bit, because you said like 18 times. So
yeah, so we did the way that it's illustrated in the course, which we started with the free the ebook offer, right, to collect email addresses, and then from there we take them to the sales page, and then from the sales page obviously to the cart. And we were doing good. I don't know if we were quite profitable, but our conversion rate was really, really high. It was where it was supposed to be on the landing page and then on the sales page. And I think it was Rachel. I forget who, but somebody was like, "Nah, like get rid of the email, get rid of the landing page, like just go direct to the sales page." And so we started doing.
Yeah.
And then I'm like tweaking stuff every single day, because for some reason my stupid like Asperger's mind thought that it was like, oh, well, I need my sales page to convert at 25%, or higher, not 10 to 12. And so I was tweaking all the time, thinking I'm failing, not hitting 25. And then they're like, no, dude, you're at like 12%.
Like sales page. Yeah.
Like, page. Calm down. And so I'm like, oh, okay. So we're fine there. Then when we were profitable and we started to scale, the biggest thing for us was, I should clarify too. When I say profitable, because there's people, I don't want people to be like, you owe me money. I mean profitable return on ad spend is what I'm talking about.
Yes.
So for us, it was like, once it was time to scale, that's when we ran into the audience challenge that I talked about earlier, where it was like, dude, like, why are we profitable? Why is our ROAS good at such a granular level? But the minute we start to scale, no, it's not. And then I realized I was like, oh, well, because of what we do, look, we got a good ad, and we got good graphics. I mean, part of doing a graphic novel is like the art you need for your ad is already built. I mean, we have all that.
Yeah.
But what else could it be? And I'm not joking. It was like 6 weeks of me like getting pretty existentially manic.
Yeah.
Because like I figured this out. Of course, like I thought that I found a solution. And I was so proud of myself, and now it's broken. And then finally it was like realizing like, oh, we can't handle audiences the same way as everybody else. We can't we can't be genre based. It's such a weird thing. It's like, I don't know. It's like, think of the most like eclectic, like prog rock band. I don't know, Swiss Cheese or something like that. It's like, we got to target Swiss cheese fans. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I got to get. And we play with this now is I'll test audiences. We're below where we should be in terms of audience quantity. But it's tested. They're proven audiences because we test each and every one. Yes. And one of the things that the trouble with us is that it'll be like, this author that we're targeting converts, but that author is only 250,000. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Trying to get up to 30 million or whatever. That's a challenge. That's a challenge that we still haven't cracked,
Yeah. If between you and me, it helps at all, the winning audience for me is at about 4 million. I have tested as many audiences and as you have ad infinitum. It's stupid. And finally, I found this audience. And what I did was I tunneled. I'd never done this before. Steve actually doesn't teach it in the program. I don't know if anybody else needs to do it the way that I do. But what I ended up doing was I said at the highest level, I want to target ebook, paperback and audiobook, because I have all three. So I have all three of those, and that in and of itself is a 314 million. It's maybe even bigger than that. And then from there, I tunneled down into the genres. So I picked mystery, detective, and there's a specific kind of fantasy. I'm having a hard time thinking of it right now, but essentially it's just like urban fantasy. There it is. So I have mystery, detective, and urban fantasy, because part of my novels are actually magical. And then from there, go ahead.
So you're doing it in reverse then, basically. Like it's like the I mean, I don't want to confuse terms.
Sure.
Your tunnel makes sense to me, but it's like the opposite basically of, I think, what's in the course. The course basically would have, you do your genres and stuff, but they have to, and then
yes.
Ebooks and Kindle and all that stuff.
I do a little bit. Yeah. So my biggest level is like the formats that I want. So I want to make sure that everybody that is in here does format first and foremost. And then after that, genre. And then after that, author. And then after that, specific tastes. So I go Stephen King. I'm having a hard time thinking of the authors right now. What's the guy who writes The Crow? If you're listening. What's that?
You mean like the comic The Crow?
No, but that's a great comic too. I love that. It's a novel called The Crow. Or I mean, it's called The Raven. Thank you. It's called The Raven. At any rate, So I mean, I take 4 or 5 authors, and then after that, I actually take lifestyle interests like humor and different things like that. So by the time that my audience is funneled, it's gone through like 6 funnels. It's very specific, and because of that, it's a real small audience. But for the first time ever, after I built that audience, I have had an absurd level of conversion. So like my ads run really smoothly. I convert well. There was a period of time where I was running a 3 ROAS, and it was like, whoa. I don't think everybody should do what I'm doing, but it was because of the hardship of how specific I was trying to get.
Yeah. Do you mind saying what the number is? Like after the funnel, like what the total, the audience size is?
Yeah, I think it's 4 million. I mean, I can actually look for you. I think I did, yes, but I think it's 4 million. So it's not like a super small audience, but it's a fairly small audience compared to what you're supposed to be doing right now, and it's working really nicely.
Facebook's telling us that we need to add like 1.5 million in order to like lower our cost per ad click.
Yeah. Of course.
And I'm like, so now that's why Deadpool comes into play. That's why I'm like trying to find these big, movie whales that might convert for me. And I don't think it's going to work. I think I have to come up with something else. But
I agree with you that trying to use movies, I did actually for a while. So one author that I used for a long time unsuccessfully was Chuck Palahniuk, because I thought Chuck Palahniuk is fairly close to what I do. He's vulgar. He's funny. He's gregarious. He's outgoing, like all these things that I am and my books are. And yet Fight Club, every single time it felt like I had this movie audience coming to me that wasn't quite the right Fight Club for me. I wanted the Fight Club, the novel. I wanted all of that kind of stuff. And I just never quite got it. So,
I mean, I wish I had the answer in terms of this, because I'm dealing with it right now. Is that it's like, I'm like, all right, so if I knock out movies, what? Like, I can't be like Batman, because our stuff's not like Batman at all.
Yeah, exactly. It's
like so annoying.
Nobody's ever laughed in a Batman movie unless they laughed at Jack Nicholson in the first movie.
It's just not. Fight Club's actually. It's so funny that you bring that up, because that's like spot on for us. I mean, if people were like Fight Club, the comic in space, I'm like, oh, that's here you go. You know? But same thing. It's like too many too many hoops to jump through in terms of logic there.
Yep.
I mean, it doesn't work. It's like, I don't know. And I know it's really weird. I feel like I'm probably being, I'm risking sounding egotistical when I say there's just no book like my own, but it's like, but it's that, as I'm like, dude, I just can't figure out this stuff. I can't find the big multi-million audience thing fits very specifically what we do.
I think that both you and I in this conversation are certainly not risking sounding egotistical, but I think both you and I have named a handful, and a fairly large handful, of different influences that have led to the creation of what we're doing.
Yeah.
And finding the audience that really appreciates those things. Obviously, look, you and I mean, like two of us, you would enjoy the book that I wrote. I would enjoy the graphic novels that you're writing. I would love what you're doing. I haven't read it yet. I'm going to read it, but I guarantee you, with everything in me, that there is a big audience out there right now that is so excited to experience what you've created.
There's a weird thing. So I will say this, right? Like, it's not all, you have to understand, like, we're very happy with how things are going. If I sound doom and gloom, it's just because I
haven't gotten that.
I'm tackling a challenge right now when it comes to the audience, and specifically audience with scaling. But the thing that's so awesome that happened immediately with Ammo for me was the fact that you just get this sense that you're tapping into. I'm tapping into a different audience. For sure I am. I'm tapping into the guys that do go to their local comic shop every day, tapping into the guys that don't come up to me at the conventions. It's like there's like this whole other planet of people out there that I didn't know existed. It's amazing. It feels really, really, there's just some of the logistics and the strategy behind it or whatever. We still have to we're still
absolutely. Okay, so in closing, one of the things that I think is really, really could be a game changer from you, if you haven't reached out to David and Lydia Scherer, they are part of this program. They're past guests on the podcast. Lydia's books have nothing to do with your books or my books, but they do a lot of Comic-Cons. So I'm going to be with them next week in Cincinnati at the Cincinnati Comic Expo. And they sell so many paperbacks that it's like you can't ignore the success that they have and what they're doing. David would be a great person for you to connect with. Let him know what you do. Anybody listening who is in a similar seat right now to Eric or myself, reach out to David. That guy is an unbelievable storehouse of knowledge. He's part of the Ammo program. He's been profitable for a really long time. He also sells a card game that's based on, the books that Lydia sells. And so it's not, I'm trying to think of how he would describe it. Just go listen to that episode, but it's a card game based on the books, and it's a interactive kind of role play game. Very cool. And they are just, they do so well. They're hiring an employee who ships all of their paperbacks and card games and everything. So very successful. It would work really well for you. Success is in abundance. I know that you're already having success. I know that you came to the Ammo program already on both feet, firmly planted on terra firma. What's coming for you is bigger than you can believe. What's coming for you is just huge. And so I'm so excited to have you on this show. Tell people where they can find your book, where they can interact with you, where they can follow you, and all of that good stuff.
I do have an author page on Facebook, and I do have an Instagram and stuff, but it's way easier if you just remember Space Bastards. So on social media, it's space_bastards. If in order to get the books and whatnot, go to spacebastards.com.
Awesome. Yeah. And then the last thing that we didn't really talk about, I mean, you've kind of created a constellation of Space Bastards, but tell me Space Bastards. I'm excited to hear, Space Bastards.
Pitch the book?
Yeah, I guess so.
So in the future, there's America has taken over the cosmos, and not everything works right. Actually, and let me preface this real quick. This is the pitch that my co-writer Joe hates. We rival each other in terms of how we pitch the book. Anyways, when you are disenfranchised and you're bummed out about your life, you join the Intergalactic Postal Service. The way it works is that whoever delivers the package gets paid. Postal workers can use any means or weaponry necessary to steal that package and deliver it themselves. And the more times that package changes hands, the more times that you hear the dispatch bracelets go parcel transferred, the more fees that the customer pays. It means that the package becomes more competitive. And so you have this kind of bloodthirsty version of Uber or Lyft, where it's a gig economy. It's people who would rather get shot at for a living than have a boss, So it's a very action-packed kind of, story. At the same time, it's very sardonic and dark in its humor. But my favorite thing about it is that it does sort of explore a little bit of, existential crises. It explores this sort of like feeling of what it takes to become master of your own destiny and all that stuff. That's what I mean when I say it's like a little bit Fight Club, like there's
absolutely
definitely a little bit of like no father figures kind of stuff buried deep in there,
Yeah.
So,
I love it. Thanks for your time.
Sure. Thank you.
Uh-oh.
Thank you for listening to TRBM. The theme music was provided by the ever-talented Christopher Talon. And hey, if you liked what you heard, share this show with other readers, because what's the point of telling stories if nobody's listening?